series of tutorial designed for teach people how to use Unreal Engine to develop virtual reality product. As you know, the VR can be divided into PC VR and mobile VR, these two categories. And the PC VR, you have a higher budget in terms of the polygon number, the complexity of lighting. But if you are running this in a mobile VR like Oculus Quest, you have to be cautious about the geometric complexity limits of the lighting. Even you are running the PC VR with a head-mount display, you need to be careful about the polygon numbers and how to optimize the whole environment. So this tutorial, a series of videos, this is the first one, will use Unreal Engine 5 as a platform to develop the VR product. The reason I use Unreal Engine 5, you might have heard we only have like 5.1 at this point. There's still a very early stage. There are some bugs, and also the Lumen and the Nanite rendering is not really designed for mobile VR. But I think it's still a good idea to learn how to develop through the new version, Unreal 5. If you do want to go more with a stable version, I would recommend Unreal 4.27, which has been developed over years, is quite stable for VR. But for us, for the learning purpose, if we want to take a higher risk to learn, I think the Unreal Engine 5 is fine. But just be careful, there might be some new updates upcoming in the next few months. There's something we covered today might not be accurate for the future versions. Okay, so the purpose for today's tutorial is number one, just talk briefly about the user interface with Unreal Engine 5 and how to start with a really basic VR environment. So the first thing I like to start with is once you download my example project from GitHub, you should be able to see an interface like this. So today I will talk briefly about this very, very basic VR template, which is come from the Unreal Engine 5 template, you can tell. All right, so we'll start with some basic stuff. So number one, when you open the project, the first thing you'll see is in this big viewport, you have this is called level or map, right? And also at the bottom of the screen, you will see this is a large content browser, which include all the elements you can assemble this level or map. So for instance, if I select any elements here on the stage or on the level, right click, you can browse to the asset. Then you can see here is the asset, the original asset located. You can also tell this is actually the file path. This goes to content, TM, widget, and you can see this element. We call this as asset. So content browser is really a good way you can see every single pieces you have used to assemble the scenario. So you can also close the browser. Let me just close everything. So you can close other windows to make this viewport a little bit larger. You can also click content browser at the bottom left. You can reopen this browser. If you like, you can click dock in layout. This will fix this browser into the bottom position. So this is called docking. Once you dock it, click settings. You can see a bunch of view control. So if you think, well, this thumbnail is too big, I can go to thumbnail size. I can change it to small. So it's pretty flexible. You can do tiny. It really depends on your screen resolution. Okay. So this is how you can browse into the different folders. In general, Unreal project, everything is organized under the content. So by the way, if you right click any of the folder and you can choose, I think it's a show in the Explorer, right? So this is basically open the Windows operating system file manager. You can actually see the file directly in this fashion. So you know exactly, where this file is located. Okay, so really depends on, you can see the entire project structure, this is the TM folder, right? The widget, right? There are a bunch of UI asset file. So there's many ways you can see files. So here's the TM widget. You can see the files. Right? Content browser. Content browser also is a really good way you can search. So if I want to know, hey, I want to find something I created before, it's called a widget. If you type the name, you can see everything with that name will be filtered. You can see them right here. Whenever you roll over your cursor on top, in the pop-up menu, it will tell you a little bit, the properties related to this file. For example, this one is a texture. If I roll over, it tells me the resolution of the texture, how big it take in the disk space, and some of this format information. If I roll over the other one, it tells me this is a blueprint class, which is something I will cover in the future, and here are the parameters related to it. So it's really, really useful. You can easily find the files you need. Okay. The content browser also can be used to create a new folder. So in the future, if I want to create something new, I can right click, I can create a new folder. I will give this folder called TM2. You might notice Unreal will give you a warning if you're using exactly the same name because it doesn't like anything with a duplicated name. So it has to be unique. So TM2. So this will be the new folder I just created. In the future, I can create a new content, new level, new blueprint. This can be organized into the new folder. Another thing really nice about Unreal is you can change the color of the folder. I use it a lot. It just help me to quickly identify the folder I created by myself. So I give a purple color. You can easily, customize the view, the look of the folder. If I don't need it, I can delete the folder, so it's gone. Okay, so this is how you organize the elements. We call this asset in the content browser. Right, so this is the bottom part. You can also navigate through the file paths directly here. Just click that. Okay, so this is the content browser. So let me just close it. It's got a bigger view. The next thing I want to talk briefly is about this bigger viewport. Basically, you see this is a 3D view. You can use your mouse, the right button. If you hold it, you can look around. So this is the right button, hold it. And for the left button is select. So if you click, you can make a selection. Okay, so it's usually highlight with a highlight orange color along the boundary. Okay, so left click is select. If you right click on top of the object, you usually see a pop-up menu. This is something you can do with this object. In a term of Unreal, we call this actor. You can do something with this actor. So you can browse to the asset. So it's automatically tell you where this comes from. Let me just simply, click another one. I can do, for example, edit in the future. I can duplicate. I can, transform. I can do a lot of things. Okay. So this is right click on top of objects. If you hold right click, right, so this is the rotating the view. Another way you can really easily navigate through this 3D thing is using the keyboard. So if you right click, hold your right click, so you are basically changing the view. In this case, if you use a W, which is forward, S backward, D, and A is the right and left. So you can basically kind of navigate through the environment, right? So you're holding the right mouse button and then you can navigate with keyboard, WASD. You can also use Q and E to go down and up. So this is kind of like a typical game convention. You can use the Q and E to go up and down. That's pretty convenient. If you do have a super large environment, if you want to increase the speed of this navigation, fly through or quick move, you can change the camera speed right here. Right now it's 4, but you can make it really fast or really slow. When you deal with a large environment, you can increase that. Okay, so this is in the camera speed right here. Okay, so this is the basic navigation for the environment. Then the next thing, let's talk quickly about the display. So first thing I want to talk quickly is about this visual display. You have different mode. By default is light. So basically it render every single layers in this rendering, including lighting, material, shadow, reflections, everything is rendered. But it's gonna take some time, right? Depends on your computer. This could be a little bit slow. So in some case, if you have a super complicated level, you want to change to a light. So this is basically get rid of all the shadow and the lighting information. The performance is much faster. You can actually switch to the unlight. You can also do wireframe. This is useful if you want to figure out how complex the environment is. So in this case, you can see everything is sort of low poly, except I think this sphere has a little bit high poly. If I use F, I can feed in the selection into my screen. So F means fit. So you can see the density of this sphere is a little bit high compared to the other boxes. Right? So this is the wireframe. So basically, this is the 3 most common mode you can play with. There's other mode like player collision, visibility collision. You can definitely turn on in the future. If you use a Nana and a Lumen, we are not doing this for now for the VR, but in the future you can visualize through this different mode. Okay. So I think that is the basic. I will switch this back to the light so you can see everything. Yeah, that's about the. Let me see the visualizers. Yeah, we'll get into this in the future. The next one is about the show. Show basically is a way you can filter which objects you want to display. So in Unreal, there's many different type of objects. For example, fog, particle system, decals, collision objects. By default, collision is turned off, but if you want to see, you can turn on. You can see this wireframe represent the collisions. Okay, usually we don't want to see the collision here, so turn it off. You can also just show the widget. You want to just show the grid. This is all available here. Okay. Plus, you can also filter the information on the post-process light. So it's all here, the filter. All right, then let's go back to here, the perspective. This is a drop-down menu. You can switch the view, for example, to top view. If you zoom out, you can basically see a wireframe. Of course, you can switch to light, right? This is the top-down view. You can also do, bottom, left, right. So this is basically the same kind of as any 3D program. You can also go back to perspective. Okay, so that is in the view perspective. And then the one at the left side, this is one really good to show, for example, in the future, I'm going to do a snapshot of the screen. I can set up the resolution right here. I can set up field of view. So this will control the cameras. Yeah, we'll get into this in the future. By the way, there's a bunch of collections of popular layout. You can switch to. Usually, I just stay with a single viewport, but for some reason, if you want to, move objects precisely, this could be a good way to switch. Yeah, let me talk quickly about the move objects. So if you use a middle view of your mouse, right, you can zoom in, zoom out. So if I want to move this sphere, I can click, right, select a sphere. There are a couple of ways you can move it. By the way, if you're holding right mouse button, you can pan the view, right? So when you select, you see there's a very tiny arrowhead show up. This is called gizmo or in a term of Rhino, this is called gamble, right? And then you can drag these arrows. You can lock the movement into that axis. So this is how you manipulate the objects, okay, very easily. You can also do this in a kind of 3D view. So if you make a selection using F, fit in, right, you see this 3 arrow head. You can drag, you can move this. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. Um, all right, and then if you're holding Alt, this is, again is something pretty standard for like a Maya or 3ds Max. So if you're holding Alt key and then using the left mouse cursor button, left mouse button, you can kind of pivot, right, the view, but using these selected objects as the center. This is extremely useful. Holding Alt, right, Alt and the left button, so you can look around. When you manipulate objects, you want to see from different view angles. This is the best way, just holding Alt. If you're holding Shift, right, I think Shift doesn't do anything. Sorry, yep, just Alt. Okay, if you're holding Shift and Alt together, it basically means duplicate. Delete this. So holding Alt and Shift, sorry, Control and Alt together, and drag, right? You can make a duplication. Control and Alt together. Yep. So that's how you manipulate objects. You can also do this through the buttons on the top. So you can see here's a move button, right? This is a select button. For anyone really familiar with Maya Max, the shortcut to activate this transformation tool is also W, E, R. W means move, E means rotate, R means scale. You can also click the button on the top. WER. It's pretty handy. So if you do, for example, scale, you can drag the box in the center. You can scale up, or you can change one dimension by dragging the axis, right? Just one axis. You can change the shape. Rotation, the same. You have 3 axes. You can rotate. So it's straightforward, just like other program. Okay. When you do the manipulation, you can also do snapping. So right now, everything is snapped in a 50 units kind of grid, but you can also disable it. You can also, this is snapping the move, this is snapping the rotation, this is snapping to the scale. You can disable them, you can, change the settings. So it's pretty standard as any program you have used before. The one I want to highlight is the rotation, because rotation is quite common. When you rotate, you do see on the screen it tell you a little bit about the degrees. So if you want to know 90-degree rotation, you just rotate until you see the negative 90 or positive 90. So that's really helpful. You see the number right there in a pivot point of the object. Okay, so this is how to manipulate objects. And Q means selection, W move, E rotate, R scale. Okay, I think that's enough about the transformation. Then let's talk quickly about the windows on the right. So first one you see, this is one called Outliner. You can also see this from here, window Outliner. So for some reason, if this disappeared, don't panic. You can just go back to window, and then you can turn on the outliner, which will show up. Even all the interfaces mess up, you can always reset the layout. So there is a default layout you can load. All right. So let's talk quickly about outliner. Outliner is a list of all the actors currently on the in the level. So here you can see the cube. If you double click the name, you can actually zoom in. Let me change this to unlight. Right, double click, you can zoom in to that object. So it's pretty convenient. right? This is the list. You might also want to pay attention to the kind of like a logo or the symbols of each object. So if it looks like a Lego brick, this is the static mesh, right? Is a geometry represent a three-dimensional object. It's a static mesh. And sometimes you see the icon looks like a light. Yes, it is a direction light. Double click, you can actually see the light right here. So each time when you make a selection, in the details, this is actually the, oops, I just accidentally dragged the panels. The panel can be dragged and docked in any way you like. So the details is actually the property of this selected object. So let me make this a little bit higher. And this window called details, you can definitely find it here as well. Okay, details. In the details, for example, if I select the light, you see the details. First group is transformation, right? The location of the light, rotation of the light, scale of the light, right? And also you have other properties such as the intensities, the color of the light, how is calculated the shadows, is this light will be visible or not. In some case, if you don't want this light to be rendered in the final game, you can turn actor hidden in game. So when you play, the light will not show up. Right? So this is the kind of, let me actually play here really quick. Yeah. So I will choose play in the selected viewport. You see the direction light is off. Okay. So this is basically the properties for each object you can see here. Like for example, cube, you will see the property related to transformation, related to its material, right? This is the material. This is where the static mesh actually locate. So here, if you click the browse button, looks like a very tiny search button. If you browse, you can find it in the content browser. Okay, so it's super convenient. Any objects, if you click browse, you can find origin, right? You can find its origin in a library, and you can manipulate. So, for example, this sphere I have transformed, rotate, scaled. So you can see this setting has been manipulated. So if you don't want to, using these values, you can click reset, right? It's basically reset this into 0, 0. I don't want to reset the location, but I want to reset the scale, right? So the ball will be reset as the default. All right. Oh, by the way, in the properties, in the future we'll talk more. You have this ball defined as movable because it will interact with the collision object. So you can actually kick the ball in the future. It's not a really fixed location. All right. I think that's enough about the details panel. Then let's talk really quick about in the details panel. I forgot one thing. In some case, this actor maybe has embedded hierarchy. So the one actor could be clustered within another actor. So you can create this kind of embedded hierarchy. In that case, you will be able to see the hierarchy right here in the details. For example, the skylight TC2, you have this embedded object or the elements under it. So in the future, we'll talk about this kind of parent-children relationship. Is a little bit complicated. Okay, so you can make selections right here if there is a hierarchy. The next one I will talk quickly about is word settings. This is super important. By the way, this word setting window is right here. Window, word settings, right here. So in the word settings, this is a place you can change the game mode. So by default, this template game mode is VR game mode, but I can switch this to any of other game mode. For example, I have embedded as first person, as third person. This is all available in this project. So if I do first person game mode, right, if I switch that, you can see the HUD is different. The player controller is being loaded. And also most important one is the pawn. The default pawn now is a BP first person character, right? So the pawn is different. Pawn is a term equals to the character. So now if I play, this is the play button. By the way, when you play, you have the option to define where you want to play. By default, it should be the viewport, but you can definitely do a new window if you want. So I will play in the viewport and play. So you can see my first person view. I do have a laser. In the future, we'll talk about it. So here I'm able to walk around. Okay. The reason this thing is a little bit dark, if you recall, in the lighting, here I can type light, right? So you can find the skylight, a direction light. If you recall, we changed its properties to hidden in game. That's the reason the sunlight does not really casting any light. So I will disable this, so it will be visible now. If I play again, yep, you'll see the light. Okay, so this is a really cool feature. You can turn on, turn off the visibility of objects. So this is the first person. This first person laser has some interaction with the widget. So if I click the mouse, I can interact with the two-dimension widget. In the future, we'll talk more. So world settings, first person. If I switch to third person, this is another option. And if I play, you will see a robot will show up. Okay, so this robot, I can use WASD to control its navigation. So the camera will actually follow it. Okay, I think the robot has some collision with the sphere, so able to interact with it. Right, so this is the robot. You can also use spacebar to jump. So you might wondering where this robot come from, right? So if you pay attention to, or we can just look at in the outliner, there is a asset. There is an actor called player start. This basically defines the starting point of your pawn. Because I switch the world settings into game mode, right, third person character, third person game, so the robot will populate, will automatically spawn in this location. If you do want to dig into it, so this is the pawn, right, called default pawn is a third person character. If I click the search, this is called browse, I can actually see the robot in the library, which is located under content, third person BP, blueprint. So that's the robot. If I double click the robot, I can actually open the window which has all the blueprint control the movement of the robot. I can use the middle wheel to zoom in, zoom out. If you click the viewport, you can actually see the robot. Right? And click F to fit in. You can see the robot is really nice with nice textures. There's a bunch of other things in this window. This is basically this is called the BP actor. You can drag the window and make it dock on the top. So this will be the new window. You can switch back to your level. You can click this new window. If you don't need it, you can close. So this is how you if you want to manipulate objects. So anything like, for example, if you click this sphere, right click, browse to the asset, right, you see the sphere right here, double click, you can open the editor window of this static mesh. So really depends on the nature of the actor. Each window could be very different. So they will have a similar kind of drop-down windows. You can drag, make it float. You can dock on the top. Right. So there's many options here. Drag the tag, dock the tag. All right. So I will close this. I don't really need edit the sphere for now. So that's how you really manipulate a different game mode. For us, because we are constantly testing on the computer screen, right, rather than VR, I think the most convenient one is actually the first person game mode. So here you can switch back to first person, BP first person, okay, and then you can play. You will see that. All right. So I think we covered a lot about this part of the screen. There's a bunch of other folders, panels will be useful. I will probably cover in the future. For example, layers, levels. These are super useful. If you do the multi-level development, you can see connection between multiple levels. One level could be the children of another level. So it's super useful. This is the persistent level is a base, but you can add other levels on the top. All right. Yeah, there's actually one more thing on the settings. The settings will be really useful if you are running Unreal Engine in a relatively old computer. You are not sure you can get a good performance. So in this case, you probably want to switch the scale from the epic into something lower, right? So this is basically will scale down the rendering quality on the screen, but as a benefit, you will have a better performance, better screen frame rate. Okay, so this is called scalability. You can play with. There's also some other settings. If you have a really slow computer, you probably want to scale down the material quality, and all the levels can be pushed down to get a better performance. I do want to show you is the FPS, which stands for frame per second. Back to the setting, back to the drop down, show FPS. See, right now I have roughly 59 because I'm doing the video recording. It hurt a little bit on the performance, but in the future, if you really got like a 20, 30 frame per second, which is very low, you probably want to do something, right? So, for example, you can change the view to unlight, so you see the FPS is bouncing up a little bit, and also you can change the scalability of your visual, the settings. This will bouncing up. So for me, I think I'm pretty happy with Epic, which is fun. Okay, so this is about FPS. In the settings, there's another three really important. First one is the project, actually two. Project settings. This is a huge window, include everything about this, parameters in the current project. In the future, we'll probably talk more about it. Just keep in mind, this is a place, if you go to maps, you can define which map is the starting map, right? And in packaging, you can define how to package the project. For example, input, you have all the settings control how this project gonna interact with game controllers, keyboard, mouse, and motion controllers. What type of motion controllers you want to link to? Oculus, Vive, right, HTC. So this is all here in the project settings. Another really super important one is called rendering. Again, we don't have to worry too much today, but in the future, when we deliver this into the mobile VR, you have to think about how to disable the non-eyes, ray tracing, high resolution reflections. So this is all controlled here in the rendering. Okay, so we'll get back to the project settings in the future. The next one is a plugin. Plugin basically define how the actual function can be added. For example, if I type VR, this is the plugin for Oculus, OpenXR. If you're using HTC, Steam should be turned on. So this is right here. If I'm user of, for example, Datasmith, which is the plugin you can bring in the beam model from Revit, other program. So this is the plugins I can activate. I already have this one activate already. If you are a user of Twinmotion, for example, Twinmotion has its own plugins. you can import. Okay, I didn't import yet because they're pretty big. All right, so these are the plugins available in the plugin folder. By the way, the word settings is right here. So for some reason, if you lost this panel, you can just go here, word settings, and it will come back. All right, I think this is relatively really long instruction on all the interface. So let's stop right here. In the next tutorial, I will talk about the settings, how to create a new object, how to bring out external objects from other program, how to set up lightings, the basic modeling part of the Unreal. I will also talk about the the different modeling mode available